What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we're going to look at one of the more influential trades in NHL history as we discuss the Patrick Roy trade, which occurred back on December 6th, 1995. Now, this trade is technically a continuation of the Eric Lindros trade, but it was going to get its own trade breakdown anyway just because of how influential it was to the NHL. So, you may be wondering why this trade happened. So, Patrick Roy and his coach, Mario Tremblay, did not have a good relationship. In fact, the two had almost fought a couple of times. Now, the straw that broke the camel's back occurred on December 2nd, 1995, in a game against the Detroit Red Wings. Now, in this game, Roy had allowed 9 goals on 26 shots before being pulled. Montreal would go on to lose that game 11-1. Roy was livid, and he immediately told the team's president, quote, "It's my last game in Montreal," end quote. He then told the media that Tremblay left him in goal to humiliate him. Essentially, Roy forced Montreal to trade him away. 4 days later, Montreal's new GM announced this trade. Right off the bat, he was criticized for it. How did it work out? We'll look at what the Colorado Avalanche got first because they're the ones who got Patrick Roy. So they got a pair of players from Montreal in exchange for 3 players as well. So Colorado got goaltender Patrick Roy. And Roy bounced back to end the 95-96 season and helped guide Colorado to its first championship. He would win a league-high 38 games in the following season. And then in the 97-98 season as well as the 98-99 season were solid for him. He posted a .917 save percentage and a 2.34 goals against average. Now, he had a decent year in the 99-2000 season, but he played a bit better in the first year of the new millennium in the 2000-2001 season, as the Avalanche would win the President's Trophy. He actually won a career-high 40 games during that season. Now, the team would go on to win the Stanley Cup, and Roy would win the Conn Smythe Trophy. He had another stellar year in the 01-02 season, as he led the league in goals against average with a 1.94 goals against average and shutouts with 9. He had a solid season in the 02-03 season where he had a .920 save percentage. Now, after the season, he announced his retirement, but he left his impact in Colorado. He is a Hall of Famer as a player, but in part due to Montreal, but, it's kind of up in the air. Most of it was due to Montreal, but he still was great in Colorado. So, now he spent 3 years as head coach of the Avalanche before resigning as well. So that's worth noting. He was a 5-time All-Star, a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, a 1-time Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and he was a 1-time winner of the William M. Jennings Trophy. So he had a very impressive time in Colorado. How about the other player? The other player they got was right wing Mike Keane, and he had a decent 1.5 years in Colorado, scoring 20 goals with 27 assists before he walked. So not the best, but pretty good. He wasn't the main player in the trade. So now we have to look at what the Montreal Canadiens got. So the Canadiens got a trio of assets. The first one we're going to look at is goaltender Jocelyn Thibault. Now, Thibault is the reason we're continuing this trade from the Eric Lindros, but again, this would have gotten its own video anyway. So Thibault spent parts of 4 seasons in Montreal. Over that time, he recorded a 67 win, 56 loss, and 24 overtime loss, a shootout loss, a tie record. He had a .908 save percentage and a 2.73 goals against average before he was traded in a bigger trade to Chicago, along with 2 defensemen in exchange for 4 assets. The first asset was defenseman Eric Weinrich. Now, Weinrich, he spent parts of 3 years in Montreal. He recorded 16 goals with 56 assists, and after that time, he gets traded. However, this trade will be discussed in the Ray Bjork video, which will be up in a little bit. And again, just like this one, that would have gotten its own trade breakdown regardless. Anyway, they got another 3 assets. The first one we'll look at is goaltender Jeff Hackett. Now, Hackett had a solid first year and a half in Montreal, as he had a .914 save percentage, but things fell apart from there. He was limited to only 34 games over the next 2 seasons due to a nagging shoulder injury. Over that time, he had a .894 save percentage and a .322 goals against average. He had a nice bounce back in the 02-03 season, but the team decided to trade him away while his value was high in exchange for a pair of assets. The first one was right wing Nicholas Sundstrom, and Sundstrom was a decent depth piece for 2.5 years in Montreal, managing to score 19 goals with 30 assists before leaving the team to play overseas. They also got a 2004 third-round pick. This would become the 95th overall pick, I should say, and this was traded to the Los Angeles Kings in exchange for a pair of players. The first one was center Radek Bonk, and Bonk was one of the better defensive forwards in the NHL. In the 2 seasons he spent on Montreal, he registered 19 goals with 25 assists before leaving the team as a free agent. But he, like I said, he was constantly up there in the Frank Selke Trophy Award conversation, so can't go wrong with that. The other player they got was goaltender Cristobal Hewitt. And Hewitt, he had a strong first year for the Canadiens, as he actually led the league in save percentage with a .929 save percentage, although he only started 36 games. He had a solid start to his second season, but a hamstring injury really slowed him down. And he was playing well in his third season, but he was traded as the team was looking to make room for their new young prospect goaltender named Carey Price. During his time in Montreal, he was a one-time All-Star. Now, he was traded to the Washington Capitals in exchange for a 2009 second-round pick. This would become the 45th pick, and it would be traded to the Atlanta Thrashers in exchange for a pair of assets. Now, the first one was defenseman Mathieu Schneider. And Schneider, he would register 5 goals with 12 assists over 23 games before walking. He was a very offensive-heavy defenseman. So, now they also got that 2009 third-round pick. This would become the 65th overall selection. They would use that to select center Jonas Natanen, and Natanen played in a single game at the NHL level before deciding to go back to Europe. Yeah, they turned Jeff Hackett into a lot of assets. Now, back to the secondary trade, the one that saw Jocelyn Thibault go away. They still have 2 more assets that we have to look at. The first one is defenseman Alain Nasrinen, and Nasrinen registered 33 penalty minutes with no offensive stats over 8 games before he was traded to the Edmonton Oilers in a swapping of 4 defensemen. So the first one we'll look at is defenseman Mathieu Descote, and Descote, he would spend all but 5 games of his 3 years in the organization in the AHL. In those 5 games at the NHL level, he did manage to score a goal and an assist before he walked. They also got defenseman Christian Laflamme, and Laflamme would spend a year and a half in a third pairing role for the Montreal Canadiens. He would have 5 assists over that time before he would also walk. A lot of stuff there, I know. Now in the secondary trade, we still have one more asset to look at. The 1999 4th round pick. This would become the 97th overall selection. With that, Montreal would select defenseman Chris Diamond, and Diamond did not sign with the team. Yeah, that was a lot of work for the secondary trade here, but we still have 2 assets that they got in the original Patrick Waugh trade. The next one we'll look at is left wing Martin Rusinski. Now, Rusinski, he had a very solid 7-year tenure for the Habs. In the 432 games he suited up to play, he scored 134 goals with 163 assists while adding 198 penalty minutes. He would then be traded to the Dallas Stars in exchange for a pair of assets. The first one is center Sean Van Allen. Van Allen had 6 goals with 9 assists over 54 games in a bottom 6 role before he walked. The next one that they got was right wing Donald Audette, and Audette bounced between the minors and the NHL for 3 years, but he spent most of his time in the NHL in a bottom 6 role. In that time, he recorded 15 goals with 22 assists over 90 games before walking. Now, the last player that we have in the original trade that Montreal got was right wing Andrei Kovalenko. Now, Kovalenko, he had a strong half season, scoring 17 goals and 17 assists over 51 games. Now, he is notable for scoring the final goal in the history of the Montreal Forum, that legendary stadium, Montreal Forum. Now, he would end up getting traded himself to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for left wing Scott Thornton. Now, Thornton, for 3.5 years, filled the role of a gritty winger. Over 222 games, he registered 25 goals, 26 assists, and a bit of a mind-boggling 443 penalty minutes before he was traded to the Dallas Stars in exchange for center Juha Lind. Now, Lind would appear in 60 games across 2 years in Montreal, registering 4 goals and 6 assists before leaving to play overseas. A lot of work for Montreal, but there's still the secondary teams in this trade. We will start by looking at the Chicago Blackhawks, who got 3 players from Montreal. The first one is, of course, goaltender Jocelyn Thibault. Now, Thibault had a solid 5.5 years in Chicago. he had a 2.62 goals against average and a 905 save percentage. He actually led the league in goals against one year, but that was in part due to a bit of bad defensive play by Chicago. Now, he would end up getting traded after those 5.5 years, but we will not be discussing that. The other two players they got were a pair of defensemen. The first one is Brad Brown. Now, he was okay over a year and a half, scoring a goal with 16 assists before he walked. The last player that they got was defenseman Dave Manson. And Manson, he was a bit better, at least offensively speaking, as he managed 6 goals with 22 assists over 101 games before he was traded away, but we will not be discussing that trade. Next, we have the San Jose Sharks, and they got goaltender Jeff Hackett. Now, Hackett, he would actually be traded before even suiting up for the Sharks because they got a better offer. We will not be discussing that trade. Then we have the LA Kings. Now, the Kings got a pair of assets here. The first one is a 2004 pick, which was the 95th overall selection. They would use that to select defenseman Paul Byer, and Byer did not sign with the team. They also got goaltender Mathieu Garon, and Garon actually won the starting job in the 05-06 season, but he struggled to the tune of an .894 save percentage and a .322 goals against average. Now, he did show improvement in the 2006-2007 campaign, albeit as a backup, before he decided to walk as a free agent. Then we have the Washington Capitals, who got goaltender Cristobal Hewitt. And Hewitt, for the team, he had a very strong 13-game stint in Washington, going 11-2, with a .936 save percentage and a 1.63 goals against average before he walked, as he essentially had priced himself out of Washington. Then we have the Atlanta Thrashers, who got a pair of draft picks. The first one was the 45th pick in the 2009 draft. This would be used to select right wing Jeremy Morin, and Morin spent a little bit of time in the minors, but he was traded before he made his NHL debut. We will not be discussing that. They also got a 2010 third-round pick. This would become the 87th pick, and it would be used to select defenseman Julian Malsherian. And he spent 7 years in the system, but most of his time was in the AHL. Now, he would appear in 30 games at the NHL level, scoring a pair of assists before he walked. Next, we have Edmonton, and Edmonton was involved in 2 separate trades. The first trade saw them net a pair of defensemen. The first one is Alain Nasrenin, and he spent 2 years in the AHL before he walked. The next one was Igor Ulanov, and Ulanov had a decent 2-year stint on the team, recording 3 goals with 23 assists, as well as 100 penalty minutes over 81 games before he would walk. Now, the other trade that they were involved in saw them net right wing Andrea Kololenko, and he had a solid 2.5-year stint on the Oilers. Over 176 games, he would score 51 goals and 58 assists, along with 109 penalty minutes before he was traded. We will not be discussing that trade. The last team we have to look at is the Dallas Stars, and they were also involved in a pair of trades. The first one saw them net a pair of left wingers in Martin Rusinski, who he would have 6 goals and 11 assists across 42 games before he was traded, and left wing Benoit Brunet, who had 4 goals with 9 assists across 32 games before he was also traded away. The last trade saw them net left wing Scott Thornton, and Thornton, he would have 6 goals and 3 assists over 30 games alongside 38 penalty minutes before he also walked. So this is definitely one of the more important trades in NHL history, not because of the secondary players as much as, of course, the main player, Patrick Roy. I do apologize for kind of slandering some of the names at the end there. That's on me, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the Patrick Roy trade breakdown. And it's going to be connected, like I said, it is connected to the Eric Lindros trade, and it will eventually lead to another trade in the near future, Ray Bjork. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good rest of your day.